Good morning, Anthem. I hope everyone has been enjoying their Independence Week and into the weekend with family and friends. We want you to continue those celebrations today as we also celebrate our freedoms and liberty in our faith, and that it was because of Jesus' sacrifice that we are able to have those freedoms and those liberties, and that we are able to pursue after happiness and holiness. Also, I want to let everybody know, though the summer tours are ended, all of those services are on Facebook. And if you don't have Facebook, we'll try to get those services up on our Anthem Slack page so you'll be able to listen to all of them, as we do believe that your life will be changed through those messages. I know we had some students that went off to the Raleigh location and was able to be a part of that service. But each location had a different service, and I honestly believe those services will reach at least one or two of you, if not all of you. Also, as well, we will be having Anthem again come Wednesday night at 7:30. You want to be there at that location at the annex. Please do not head into the sanctuary. We want to try to keep things fan out across the campus so we don't have such a big mosh pit of people, but that we can still try to keep the social distancing and be a part of our youth group once again. So today we're going to go ahead and dive into our series one more time, as this is the last lesson of the quarter for the series, The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So if you can probably guess, we're going to be talking about Jacob today. So let's go back to the beginning where Jacob started off. We see Isaac and we see Rebekah, and they are with child, but not just one child, they're with twins, two boys. And at this point we see Rebecca, she's in labor, and we see there is a struggle going on in the womb. There is a fight between the brothers on who will be the first one out. We see that there is Esau, we see that there is Jacob, and they're both struggling to get out. And we see Esau is the first one out, and we see Jacob is soon to follow after, not only moments later. So we look and we see that Isaac and Rebekah are looking to name their children. This is very important in the culture that day, that when you had a name, it was because you showed certain characteristics or different traits that could be affiliated with your name. So when Esau came out, he was really red, and he had red hair, and immediately they said, "This son shall be named Esau, because he is red." We see Jacob, but why name Jacob Jacob? Well, I'll tell you why. Jacob was named Jacob because when we look in the womb, in the struggle, we see that Jacob, when Esau put his foot out of the womb, that Jacob reached back and pulled Esau back into the womb. And at this point, they said his name will be Jacob because he is a supplanter. He grabbed onto Esau's heel and pulled him back in. He was considered a cheat. He was considered a liar. And at this point in their life, they have been named and they have been affiliated with that name and those characteristics. They've been pretty much been labeled since they were born of who they'll be before they even had a chance to really grow up and experience and find out who they are. So they have this name affiliated with them, and I want you to remember that, because that will be important as we get along in this story. So let's look at the life of Jacob. We see Jacob and Esau as they grow up. We see Esau as a strong man. He's the manliest man around. This man is a hunter. He is a strong man who likes to rough it out in the wild. He likes to hunt for game, and he's can make a pretty mean stew, as his father Isaac has said. We look at Jacob, though. Jacob hung around his mother. Some would say, if not, that his mother had pretty much taken Jacob underneath her wing, and kind of showed Jacob the ropes as Isaac showed Esau the ropes. We see that Jacob is as we would call him, a mama's boy. Jacob liked hanging around the house. Jacob liked helping his mother when it came to chores and tidying up the tent and cooking the food and helping mom set the table. This is Jacob. He's pretty much a homebody. He's an excellent cook. I mean, his food alone, the aroma would begin to fill the tent, and everybody knew Jacob was cooking in the house. And we see that in those talents and abilities of Esau and Jacob. But still, we see the label that has been given to Esau and Jacob. As life begins to go on, we see that Jacob is always trying to get ahead. He's always vying for attention. We see one day that Esau went out hunting, and he's just tired, he's exhausted, he's coming back home, and he's ready for food. He's ready to eat. And we see that there is Jacob making some food, and he's making sure that, again, that aroma begins to billow up in the tent. And then afar off, you see Esau. He's coming home, and he's smelling that food, and he's excited. He's ecstatic that there's going to be food on the table when I get home. And Lord knows I love to get home and find out there's food on the table waiting for me. But he's going over there to Jacob, and he says, go ahead and give me some of that stew that you're making. It smells mighty fine. And Jacob goes, oh, no. This stew is special. He's like, this is my stew. You can't have this. And Esau's like, what are you talking about, man? Everything has a price. Tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you for that stew. And Jacob's thinking, he's like, okay, this is my opportunity. He's an opportunist. He's looking for that chance to get ahead, like we were talking about. And we see him, and he's bartering with Esau, and he goes, you know what? I will give you this stew, but I only want one thing. I want your birthright. At this point, Esau's like, a birthright? Man, if that's what it takes to get the stew, that's fine with me. I mean, I'm already the eldest son, so I'm going to get Dad's blessing, but I won't have to worry about that birthright. If he wants the birthright, he can have the birthright. I'm getting the blessing. So he said, what good is the birthright? I'm hungry now. Well, we see Esau give Jacob that birthright. So that pretty much means Jacob is now the first to get everything. He gets the first dibs on the new Xbox. If he gets to play, you know what? He gets to go and play first. If there's a new game, you know what? He gets to play it first. If there's a trip going out of town and only one family member gets to go, guess what? That's Jacob. He gets to go. He's got first dibs. That's that birthright. It gave you certain privileges. But Esau didn't know what he had. And he sold that off for just a measly pot of stew. And we look as life continues to go on. We see Isaac is getting really weak. He's getting older, and he's become blind. And at this point, he's realizing, you know what, I don't have much time left. I don't know when the Lord's going to take me, but I know if he does take me, I need to pass off my blessing to my son Esau. Well, at this point, Rebecca is ecstatic. She knows that Jacob is an opportunist. She raised him that way. It was in her family line to be opportunists. And we see she goes to Jacob and she says, "Look, Jacob, there's an opportunity that's just arrived. Your father is getting old, and he just told Esau that he's ready to pass off the blessing to him, and that if he would go out and he would go hunt for some venison and bring it back to him, and that he would eat that stew, that Isaac would bless Esau. But here's your opportunity, Jacob. While he is off doing that, we can devise a plan to steal that blessing for you. You already have the birthright, so let's work together on getting that blessing for you, seeing how you're my favorite." And at this point, we see Jacob and his mother plotting to lie to Isaac to steal the blessing from Isaac and from Esau. And at this point, we see they've pulled out all the stops. They're ready for anything. If Isaac asks, "You know what? Prove yourself." Jacob's lined his arms with furs from the animal. He has made the pot of food. And because Isaac is blind, he can't really tell that it's Jacob. So we see Jacob going in with a pot of food, and he's giving it to his father, and he's saying, "Go ahead and bless me." And he says, "You're not Esau." He said, You sound like Jacob. I know that voice." And he goes, "No, I am Esau." He's like, "Then I want you to prove it. Prove it to me." And at this point, Isaac reaches for Jacob's hand, and he's feeling his arm, and he said, "You know what? Your arms are hairy like Esau, so you must be Esau. And because you have given me food to eat and have done what I've asked, I will bless you." And the blessing is handed off to Jacob. Well, shortly after, we see Esau has returned home with what his father has asked. And he makes it home, and he's made this pot of food for his father, and he goes to his father and he says, "Father, I'm ready now for the blessing. Here is what you've asked of me." And at this point, Isaac is completely baffled and shocked. At this point, he knows he's been deceived, because he knows who Jacob is. He knows who Rebecca is. And at this point, there's nothing left for Esau. And Esau is mad with anger, and he's upset. He's in anguish. He's crying out, "Father, no, this can't be it. I was supposed to receive the blessing. Please tell me you have another blessing for me. Please tell me that you have something to give me." And at this point, we see Isaac, as he is moved on by compassion. He said, "Your brother has the blessing. He will keep the blessing, but I will bless you, Esau." He said, "You will go off and you will be strong. You will be settled in this land, and that you would serve your brother and his descendants, and that you would destroy the yoke that binds them up." At this point, Esau is upset because he was the one to receive the blessing. It wasn't that he was to serve his brother, but that his brother was supposed to serve him. But the tables have turned because of Jacob's deceit. At this point, he is upset to the point that Esau says, "You know what, Jacob? You're exactly who everybody said you were. You're exactly what everyone has labeled you to be. You are that supplanter. You are a thief. You are a liar. You are a deceiver. I cannot trust you. You make me so mad that when I look at you, I want to kill you. I'm sick and tired of your games, Jacob. You've fooled me time and time again. You are a conniver. I can't forgive you for this." And at this point, Esau is telling Jacob, and he's making coming. He said, "Look, when it is time for our father to die, in my grief, I'm going to kill you." At this point, his mother is looking at him and is telling Jacob, "Jacob, this can't be your fate. You have to leave. You cannot stay." And we see as she is telling him, you have to go. You have to leave. You need to make a life for yourself. You just can't stay here. It's not safe for you anymore. And we see Isaac and Rebekah telling him, "Go to Laban. Go to your Uncle Laban's house," Rebekah's brother. And we look at Laban's name, and his name means emptiness. His name means prideful. His name means a stubborn man. And he's moving from his parents' house to Laban. So as he begins to run to Laban and he's getting away from Esau, we see him take a pit stop. He's been going and going and going, and at this point he's tired, so he lays down to rest his head. We see that at this moment, while he is asleep, the Lord gives him a vision of angels ascending and descending upon a ladder, and they begin to become as numerous to where there was nothing but light. And at this point, Jacob is so moved upon this scene that he wakes up and he says, "This is a dreadful place. This is a scary place." Sometimes when we have sin in our life and we are running from things in our life and our past, and we make it into the house of God, sometimes it feels like a dreadful place. It feels like a scary scene. It's not always comforting because we know what our life has been like and what's been in our hearts. But at this point, he says, surely God has been here. This place will be known as Bethel. We know Bethel as the place where we see Abraham as he has settled in the past, and how his tents were between Bethel, or east of Bethel. So Bethel is not a new place, but it is known as the house of God. We see that Jacob has rested where his grandfather rested. So at that point, we see that Jacob has been given a vision of the house of God. We see that at this point he has direction, but it's not time for Bethel to be his place of residence yet. He's still running from Esau. He doesn't want to stop at the house of God. He's just made a pit stop. He really doesn't want to stick around. He's running. And sometimes we run, and we run to the house of God, and we get what we need, and we run out, and we call it done, and think that's enough to hold us over for a little while, and then we go back and do it all over again. Sometimes it's not always easy, but it is a place where we receive direction. It is a place where we receive a word from God. It is a place where we get clear vision. So we see as Jacob begins to leave Bethel, and he heads to Laban's house, to that place of emptiness. And at this point, he reaches Laban, and he's starting to settle down at Laban's house. And we see that he has found a girl that is pretty fair. She's a good-looking girl. She's the best-looking girl in the whole entire area for miles. I mean, every guy wants to be friends with this girl. This girl is Rachel. And he is so in love with her that he goes to Laban and he says, Laban, here's what I'll do. I don't have much money, but I'll work for you if I can have Rachel. Well, Laban says, well, with the price for Rachel, I will give you Rachel for 7 years of hard labor. Jacob's considered the cost, and he says, sure, I'll work for you for 7 years if I can have Rachel. Well, we see that Jacob is working for those 7 years with one thing on his mind, and that is that he gets to marry the love of his life, Rachel. Well, we see him as he's finishing up those years, and he's ecstatic. He says, look, Laban, I've done what you've asked. I've done 7 years of hard labor. And we see Laban, and he's looked at all that Jacob's done over the last 7 years, and he says, all right, it's time for a wedding. Let's put on a wedding. And they begin to put on a wedding, and they're partying, and they're ecstatic, and he gives his daughter off and puts a veil on her, and they get married, and then the next thing you know, the next morning, we see that Jacob is waking up to his bride, and he's pulled off the veil, and it's not Rachel, it's Leah. Who is Leah? The Bible says that Leah was tender-eyed. She was the older sister of Rachel. And Leah, we look at the customs of that day. Leah, I know a lot of people say she has the crazy cross eye, but in that culture, in that day, you couldn't just describe something negative about somebody. And sometimes we'll hear in the sayings, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. Well, they pretty much highlighted Leah's beauty. Where was her beauty? It was in her tender eyes. But everything else was sure ugly. So can you imagine waking up in the morning and, that's rough. But here is Leah, and he just woke up with a big shock, and he said, well, where is my bride? Where is Rachel? He approaches Laban, and Laban's over here said, look, You should have known. She's my firstborn. I have to sell her off first before I can give you my second oldest. You know these things, Jacob. She had to be married first, so here you go. Here's your bride, Leah. Can you imagine? The cheater got cheated. I would say that's a little bit foolish on Laban's part, especially knowing who Jacob is. I mean, he knows his name and what his name means. Should have known better, because Jacob doesn't play fair by any means. But Laban is giving Jacob a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. And Laban's looking over here at Jacob, and he said, look, I know that was pretty dirty, and I played you, but I want to make it right. How about I let you have Rachel, but for another 7 years of hard labor. At this point, Jacob's probably thinking to himself, I just worked 7 years for a woman I didn't ask for. And now you're saying you want to make it right by giving me the bride that I asked for? But you know what? His love was so great for Rachel that he went and worked another 7 years for Rachel. And when he finally got his bride, he had gotten everything he asked for. And at this point, he's getting a little bit older, and he's ready to go ahead and move on. He doesn't want to stay with Laban anymore. He's tired of the emptiness. He's tired of settling down and not having anything really to show for it but hard work and 2 wives. He wants to go make something of himself. But we see Laban doesn't want him to, because Jacob is the best of the workers. He is the hardest worker out of all of them. He's his top employee in the family business. And we see Jacob is saying, you know what, I'm going to leave and I'm taking your daughters with me. So why don't you give us a little bit of some wealth, give us some cattle, give us some sheep. Let's take those things and we'll be on our way and we'll go make a life for ourselves. And Laban's thinking, I don't know, Jacob. I can't let you go. You're the best employee I have, and I mean you guys are my family. It's like when you go, I'm just left with the family business. So we see Laban's working a deal out again with Jacob. And it's, again, Laban's pretty foolish thinking that he's going to cheat a cheater. Well, here comes Jacob and he said, you know what? How about this? I'll give you, or Laban said, I'll give you the worst of the bunch. I'll take the best out of those livestock. You see the sheep over there, the ones that are perfect, you know what? I'll keep. The ones that are spotted, you get to keep. So Jacob's thinking, all right, that's the way you want to play it, let's play it. So we see Jacob slipping a little bit of some dye. And when these baby lambs are born, we see that they're spotted. And at this point, he's said, you know what? Look, Laban, all these lambs over here, they're spotted. So you remember your word? You get to keep the perfect ones, the ones that are clear without spot, and I get to keep the ones with spot. There's Jacob again, answering to the name everyone has labeled him as, what's become so easy to him. Again, being that sneak, that supplanter, that cheater, that liar. Well, he takes the sheep And we see that he's even stole the idols from Laban's house, and they're running. And at this point, Laban's kind of caught on. I just got cheated. Oh no. Somebody's got to pay. And we see as Laban begins to pursue Jacob until God gets involved. And we see that there is a peace that is made between Jacob and Laban. But at this point, Jacob is starting to realize, you know what? Every time I cheat somebody, every time I do someone wrong, there's always a consequence, and it never really benefits me. It just drives a wedge between. And I've made peace with Laban. I don't want to be Jacob anymore. I want to make peace with my brother Esau. And we see him go back to that place in Canaan, Bethel, and he sends out messengers to Esau. Well, the messengers come back and they're saying, look, Jacob, we saw, and Esau has got 400 men ready to come and meet you. And at this point, we see Jacob only thinking the worst. Oh man, my brother Esau, he's going to make right on his promise, and he's going to kill me in his grief because I cheated him and I lied to him. And he said, you know what? I'm not running. But he's trying to play things his way. We see him split his family in half, sends one to one side of the land and one to the other side of the land. So if anything was to happen, then at least his children, or at least some of his children, would be safe. So we see, as the night begins to come, we see Jacob praying in that place, Bethel, the house of the Lord. And we see as he is praying that there is an angel that comes, and he's wrestling with this angel. And he's fighting with this angel until daybreak. And as they're fighting, he's calling out, the angel's calling out, let me go, let me go, let me go. And we see the same words that Jacob used to his father, bless me. He's making the same plea to this angel. He says, bless me, bless me. I will not let you go until you bless me. And then as day began to break, we see as this angel is finishing up, and he's like, look, the day is breaking. You've been wrestling with me all night. I've got to go. I'll do what you said. What's your name? At this point, he said, my name is Jacob. And this angel says, no longer will your name be Jacob. Your name will be called Israel. And at this point, we see the angel begin to touch his thigh. And as he touches his thigh, he can no longer walk the same. His walk has changed. And we see that in this moment, he names the place, I want to say, it was Bethel. I just want to double check. Peniel. And this place is called Peniel. It is known as Peniel because he says, this is the place that I have seen God face to face. So as I'm telling you this, we see that Jacob has been running all his life. He has stumbled, he has fallen, he's made some mistakes. And we see him return back to the house of God. We see him, after all his running, he's finally ready to face God. And he is in this point where we would consider as travailing. He's trying to get God's attention. He's wanting a touch from God. And at the house of God, he meets God face to face. He was ready to make amends after everything that he had went through. He was tired of answering to the name Jacob. He was tired of being that liar, that deceitful, cheating person. He doesn't want to be the same in what everyone had labeled him as. See, you can answer to the name that everybody gives you, and it could define you. But when you go to the house of God, when you're tired of all your running, when you're ready to make things right with your brethren, you go to the house of God and looking for forgiveness and forgiving, you find God face to face. And when you get to that point, you don't move and you don't stop until you get a word from God. And what did the word say? It said that that place is where he saw God face to face in the house of the Lord. So just remember, when you run, when you do your own thing, yes, you may fall down. Yes, you may answer to the names that people have given you, and you think that's all that you have for you. But when you're ready to see a change, God will not just change how you walk, but he'll change your identity. His name was Israel. And we see that when he is named him Israel, he was a prince. We see that Israel is a prince. You are a child of God. You don't have to answer to the names everyone has given you. But you can find yourself in God when you meet him face to face. So as we begin to wrap this up, I challenge you to go to the house of the Lord today. Seek his face. Let him change your life. Let him change the course of where you were going. Because we look that after that moment, Esau did what the blessing was given to him. He took the yoke off of his brother. That yoke was unforgiveness. That yoke was hurt and pain. And they were able to come together again as a family in peace, in harmony, in unity. And that's what I challenge you today. Just remember that God sees where you are, and it doesn't matter what you've done, that God can forgive you, and that man, with God's help, can forgive you too. So let us pray. Jesus, Lord, I thank you for this opportunity, Lord, that we have been able to look in your word, Lord, and look into the life of, Lord, Moses and the life of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Lord, and know that you are the God of men who have maybe failed and fallen time and time again, but you still pursue them. You still have a purpose. Jesus, I pray that as we have gone through these series, Lord, that, Lord, the youth in this church, Lord, would be able to look and remember, you know what, it doesn't matter what I've been through. It doesn't matter what I'm going through. It doesn't matter what's ahead of me or what I'm running from. But Jesus, you have a purpose for me. And all of those things that have happened, all the things that are happening, and even the things that I don't even know about that's going to be happening, let me never lose sight that you have a plan, you have a purpose, and though I might fall, and though I may stumble, and though I may fall short, Jesus, I can always find you in your house. I can always find you, Lord, face to face when I get in prayer. Jesus, I pray, Lord, that we can always turn back to you, Lord, that even in the times when we aren't able to make it to your house, Father, I pray you know exactly where we're at, and Lord, that you wait patiently for us. Jesus, I pray for our youth today, Lord, and for the rest of the week and for the rest of the year. Lord, strengthen them. Keep them united, oh God. Jesus, that their spirit may be renewed each and every day when they get up. Lord, I pray, put that burden of prayer on them. Lord, that they would hear from you, Lord, that they would get the word that they need. Jesus, as we work together, Lord, as we pursue after you. And I thank you again during this Independence weekend for everything, Lord, that you have done, and by your blood and by your stripes, Lord, it brings our healing, as it brings, oh Lord, the washing away of sins. Lord, I thank you today, and I praise you, and we look forward to hearing a word from you, Lord, in the next few minutes. In Jesus' name, amen.